What we've got here is...
The I Just Saw This Movie podcast. Welcome to your favorite uncut, uncensored, spoiler-filled podcast. I'm your host, Matt Brando. I just saw Kong Skull Island. I saw the trailer, and obviously, backstory here, I like kaiju stuff. I love Godzilla. I think Godzilla is my favorite of all the monsters. I think Kong is still cool. I think my favorite Kong is probably Kong 05 from Peter Jackson. And my favorite Godzilla films are probably Godzilla 85 and then the Godzilla 2014. So I really enjoyed 2014, and I thought this film would be, at worst, okay. And at best, good, great. And I thought I would leave the theater thinking it was going to be, it'll be all right. But I was wrong. I was very fucking wrong. Before going into the theater, there were 3D glasses given out, so there was a 3D screening. And I'll just say straight from the get-go, the 3D is very poppy. The 3D is too aggressive, and it's not as seamless as something as Guardians of the Galaxy or something. So I found it a little bit of a distraction. If you really like poppy 3D films, go see the movie in 3D. If not, just see it in 2D. And I want to say also, before going into this film, that the last 2 movies I saw in cinemas that I remember were John Wick 2 and Split. Great fucking movies. This one's not. If you thought Godzilla 2014 was bad, well, I'm afraid I've got some bad news. No one's going to get that if you're not a wrestling fan. This movie was not good. It was actually terrible, and I'm actually cool with not seeing it again. But the film starts off with this prologue of this young guy from the 40s. Obviously, World War II crashes down. Japanese guy, they're fighting, and then Kong shows up. You know right from the get-go that this guy is John C. Reilly's character, because in the trailers we've seen, this guy's been stuck on this island for so long. You put the pieces together. He was in the 70s, and now this is a flashback to the 40s. This is obviously John C. Reilly. And this is kind of John C. Reilly's low-key movie. We start off the film with his prologue, with his backstory, and then we go into, the other people finding John C. Reilly on this desert island, all by himself with the natives and the monsters. And then we have to rescue John C. Reilly, take him back to America. And then there's this epilogue that brings him back to his family. And, he's happily ever after. He's back home in Chicago watching the Cubs lose. So he had the most story to the film, as well as Samuel L. Jackson, who plays like this general or commander or whatever his fucking rating is. And he has this personal vendetta against losing the war. He opens this box of medals. He has like a bunch of stars and shit. And he's like, what was this all for? And he's all very depressed. And he gets a phone call for one last mission, obviously for this Kong thing. And he ends up striking this personal war that he wants to win against Kong. He wants to defeat Kong because he couldn't defeat the Viet Cong. Oh, ha, 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 ha. They literally wrote it like that, though. I actually like that. It's a good plot for me. So the 2 deepest stories for the film are John C. Reilly and Sam Jackson. Besides that, there's nothing else that really goes on in this film. It starts off with the Monarch titles, like the Godzilla Monarch, when you're showing the Godzilla footage, and it kind of goes into the film. I really liked it in Godzilla. I liked how it worked. Also, the music. Okay, I didn't really think the music was that great for Godzilla 2014. I thought it was all right. It wasn't like, fucking Jurassic Park or anything. But it was at least memorable. I can tell you, I can remember the fucking theme and all that shit. Kong Skull Island? I cannot remember a single cue. I don't remember the Kong theme. All I remember is this overabundance of 70s rock music, which I really don't like to begin with. But if it works in the story, it works. And they used it at least 4 times, maybe 5 times. And there's only one time where I felt like I wasn't watching this forced Suicide Squad-esque editing. It was more towards the middle or the end of the usage of the classic 70s rock. But again, I don't know, they might have been going for this Apocalypse Now time period type deal, and it just didn't work for me. There's a lot of, I'm about to get into the directing here, but I'm just going to say it right now because it's on my mind. There's a lot of usage of slow motion And it works for some instances, maybe when Kong is attacking soldiers, whatever, but there's just so much of it. Like, even, I guess in a homage to Apocalypse Now, there's all these slow motion shots of helicopters. I'm just like, okay, what's the point of this? What's the point of this? What's the point of this? And there's just more slow motion. It's like probably 6 instances of slow motion. I'm thinking to myself, but do we really need this much? Like, what is going on with this film? And I felt like the film was just all over the place for direction. I'll get to that in a second. I felt that the CGI was good, as was it for Godzilla 2014. Like, Godzilla is fucking great. That was a great looking movie. And Kong looked pretty good. For the most part, they did a great job. The skull crushers and most of the bugs and shit looked pretty great. And they probably benefited from shooting on location. They shot in Vietnam. They shot in Hawaii. And you can really tell a lot of that stuff looked real. I think it was mostly the color correction that made it look kind of fake sometimes. Like, it was a very yellow looking film. Like, everything was yellow. Like, I understand, Dusk and Dawn, and Kong Skull Island, it's orange and yellow. And it's like, okay, but can we change up a little bit how the film looks? So it might have this artificial look to it, even though it had this real life, even though it was shot on location. It's kind of unfortunate. The action was fucking great. This is like 2 different films, because the action was so good and it made me invest in the story, and it was directed very well. It was directed almost like Godzilla 2014, or something. What's his face? The dude from Spain who's winning like everything now with his long takes. Revenant guy, Gravity guy. I forget his name. Cuarón. Cuarón was his name. Alfonso Cuarón. Is that it? I felt like a Cuarón type. I think that's how you pronounce his name. I think it felt like a Cuarón type direction. So it was really great. Very personal action. I don't think we ever got that in a Kong. Everything's all like cinematic, away. So it was really great to get that type of action direction in the films. But unfortunately, everything outside the action is like a completely different film. The direction is like, it's mostly the writing. The characters, man, they suck. The dialogue sucks. I'm gonna go through actually right now. This film has Tom Hiddleston, Samuel L. Jackson, Brie Larson, John C. Reilly, John Goodman, Corey Hawkins. If you don't know Corey Hawkins, that's a dude. He's in 24 right now. He's also Dr. Dre in Straight Outta Compton. John Ortiz, the very underrated John Ortiz. Some chick I don't know, Tang Jing. Some guy who played Kong. Jason Mitchell. Jason Mitchell played Eazy-E. Jason Mitchell, I'm glad I got to this name right now. Jason Mitchell has a lot of screen time, and he makes a lot of jokes. And it's not his fault that the jokes fall flat, because they fall flat, and it's because of the writing. This cast, from top to bottom, is incredible. Incredibly talented. But they had nothing to do. They had no memorable moments, really. I thought it was very disappointing that you have a cast like this and you don't remember any of them, really, besides Sam Jackson and John C. Reilly, because they actually had a story there. I'm going to talk at the end of this about characters, but I want to answer some things real quick. There were some Jurassic Park references in this film. I might as well talk about some of these things. One of the shots of Skull Island looked like Isla Nublar to me. Sam Jackson literally says, "Hold on to your butts." It's fucking incredible. And John Ortiz gets carried off with like these pteranodon guys, the creatures, and he gets Eddie Card. He gets torn apart, but it's in the sunset. It's actually kind of gruesome, and people in the theater are like, ugh. There is an end credit scene. It starts off like very weird. It starts off with Tom Hiddleston saying, "You're just gonna sit there in the dock? You're just gonna sit there?" I'm like, what the fuck is this, like breaking the fourth wall? We're sitting here and we're being made fun of because we sat through the credits and we're watching a post-credit scene. And then it opens up with him and Brie Larson, but they're actually in a scene and they're talking to like somebody on the other side of an interrogation glass, like an interrogation room. And Corey Hawkins comes in with the one chick, Tan. I'm bad with names, Tan. I apologize, Tan. You're not listening to this, Tan. They come in and they're like, "Oh, welcome to Monarch." I'm like, oh my God. That's another thing. I can't forget to say this shit. Corey Hawkins, man. What was his character? He was just like John Goodman's like buddy, like his coworker. And John Goodman played like this fucking mad scientist. He starts off like, oh, I just want to find something on this expedition. But then like, oh, of course, it's revealed that, oh, he did the bombs because the monsters are real. He literally says that. Because Sam Jackson, you see in the trailer, probably goes up to him with the gun. Or Sam Jackson's holding a gun, but he's holding it at John Goodman. He's like, you gonna tell me everything I need to know. And John Goodman's like, monsters are real. And I'm thinking to myself, of course, cliche number 101. The mad scientist is actually a mad scientist. Even though he played it off like he wasn't. He actually knows everything. Oh my god, it's Bryan Cranston again. In the next film, they're going to have another guy saying, oh, I knew there was going to be a Godzilla. Or I knew there was going to be there's going to be a Mothra or some shit in the next film. Oh, God. But Corey Hawkins brings in the Tan, and they have some shit, and then they show off like Mothra and the three-headed monster, and then they have Godzilla. They're all like fucking like cave paintings or something stupid. And then they fucking play the Godzilla roar, and then it cuts to black, and then the Godzilla roar ends like. But that's the post-credits. You know, some people were asking about that, and we're going to get to the Twitter questions here in a minute. I find myself not really liking the last act of the film, which includes like the big final battle between the big Skull Crusher and Kong. It was really well directed, the setup with Sam Jackson and Kong. Some of the shots were really well done. Like I said, the action is great. Greatly directed. But I still checked out the movie before this was happening. But there's this night battle between the big Skull Crusher and Kong. And it seems that Kong is down for the count and the Skull Crusher is about to kill Kong. And then it kind of cuts to the daytime where the people are, the rest of the people survivors are going to the boat to leave the island. And Skull Crusher shows up to kill him. Well, actually, this one guy shows up. He wants to sacrifice himself. It's the dumbest thing ever. I'm not even going to talk about it because pretty much everybody else will talk about it. But Skull Crusher kills him. Skull Crusher's about to kill everybody else. And then all of a sudden, Deus Machina, Kong comes in and fucking saves the day. What the fuck happened between you and the Skull Crusher at night? It seemed that you were going to die, Kong, and we assumed that you were going to be dead. So you're telling me that the Skull Crusher just kind of left you there and didn't like kill you, even though the whole purpose, here's the whole purpose. I guess I didn't backstory this. There are a bunch of, and I'm going to talk about this also in a second about when I checked out, but the whole background story of the Skull Crushers is there's a bunch of them, and most of them are kind of like adults or babies or something, but there's one big Skull Crusher that waits in the ground, because they all come from the ground, that waits in the ground until Kong is down for the count, like dead. So the Skull Crusher, the big one, can come out of the ground and claim the island as his or hers. And wouldn't that be the purpose of the big Skull Crusher if Kong is down to kill Kong and claim the island, not to let Kong live? Unless the big Skull Crusher thought she killed or he killed Kong and Kong kind of faked dead, which we never fucking saw. It's just a mess. That was one of my biggest issues. Just Deus Machina Kong just coming out all of a sudden is alive. And we totally forgot about that night battle that just fucking happened. So I might as well skip ahead to my notes I have for later for this podcast. So I checked out about 2/3 of the way through the film. They go to the graveyard. And this, the graveyard that you've seen all the fucking spoiler pics, thanks to like Real Tours Hawaii or whoever, of, the Triceratops skull and the Kong skulls. I think it was like Kong's dead parents. That's what it was. And the skull crawlers come out or crushers, where the fuck they're called, who cares? And they come out and they start attacking the humans. And that's when John Goodman dies. Someone on Twitter asked if John Goodman dies. Yes, he does. I'll get into your Twitter questions here at the end. But, John Goodman gets killed by a Skull Crusher, and then the Skull Crusher's attack. And once again, there's a Jurassic Park-esque Raptors in the kitchen scene where the Skull Crawler is like kind of sniffing, but like Tom Hiddleston's hiding behind a log or a dead rib cage. And it's like, can we do something more original here? Even though I will say this, the way Kong kills the Skull Crusher at the end, the final battle, Kong doesn't rip open the jaws like every other fucking Kong in a dinosaur. Kong slices it up and ends up pulling out its tongue. So at least they went with something different there. But yeah, the characters were so bad that I checked out at that scene. That's probably about 2/3-ish of the way through the film, with the skull crawlers attacking the people in the graveyard. And I felt that some of the characters were decent outside of Sam Jackson and John C. Reilly, because I felt like Brie Larson and Tom Hiddleston actually had a little bit of chemistry. They had this scene that was terribly written in like the cargo area of the ship going to the island. Here's the thing. There's a boat toy. You never see that boat in the film. There are helicopters. You can pick up the helicopter toy because the helicopters are in the film. But I don't think there was any Jeeps. There's just pretty much helicopters, and the helicopters crash out when Kong attacks him. And that's about it. There's no like ghillie suit usage. There's a lot of cool stuff with the toys that really wasn't utilized in the film at all. So I found that very odd. But I felt like in that cargo ship scene, Brie and Tom actually had a decent amount of chemistry, but they barely really had any screen time together. They had a really stupid scene with Kong where it was like, Naomi fucking Watts thing where she touches Kong and Kong accepts her. Kong accepts him. Kong accepts her, and Kong just kind of goes away. Like, he automatically knows, oh, she's a good chick. She's a war photographer. And what the fuck, dude? How does she be a or she's an anti-war photographer? How the fuck is she an anti-war photographer going on a war mission? That's my question. But I was thinking to myself, because the way she was set up, she's getting like a phone call when she's developing in her like dark lab or whatever they're called. They're non-existent anymore because no one does photographs really. Everything's fucking digital. But she gets like a phone call, and it seems like she's kind of like sneaking on the boat. I thought that was going to happen, but she had papers and shit and said it to Sam Jackson. And she was in the shit, I guess, and gained the respect of Sam Jackson. He was okay with letting her on the boat and on the expedition. And the whole time she's just like, taking pictures and smiling and not doing much else, really. So there's a lot of wasted potential with the characters. They all kind of sucked, and I felt like the humor was such a fucking a miss. I felt like I was laughing 5%. Not lying, 5% of the time. I laughed maybe three times. And there's like a lot of jokes told. And I felt John C. Reilly is such a funny fucking guy in real life, and of his characters and all the work that he's done. But here, I don't think the shit that he did was that funny. He said like a hilarious line because it's out of the blue. It's a PG-13 movie. He said the F word. I was like, holy shit, that's amazing. And I laughed. But that was like only one of 3 times where I actually laughed. The other one I do remember, it was actually the usage of that trailer line that was cringeworthy, where he goes, yeah, we're going to die here together. That's actually really, the other line that's also in the trailer, it's like right after that or before that. I forget what it was. That's how fucking, non-memorable this movie is. But I've actually found myself laughing in the context of the film at that, rather than the trailer. I'm like, oh god, I don't know about this movie. So whoever cut that together, bad decision possibly, but I can also see why you cut it together, because it was funny in the context of the film. People were asking about the creatures, so I'm trying to remember all the creatures that were in the film. There's like this ant, log, bug thing. It was kind of cute. It doesn't do any harm, even though it was shot at. There's the big ass spider. There's the skull crawlers. There's that moose thing you saw in the trailer. I don't think we saw this in the trailer or the promotional footage. There's a octopus. So the octopus attacks Kong, and then Kong fucking eats it. And I think that's all for the creatures, because people are asking me about the creatures. But to wrap up that third act fight, fucking Brie Larson, she's on like a fucking mountain way out, and she has a flare gun, and I think like something like incendiaries or something was in the flare or on the skull crawlers, the big one's head, when the skull crawler's like running towards Kong to attack it. Brie Larson, and flares, when you fucking shoot them, they have like an arc to them. They're not like a straight bullet, because there's no like mass or whatever there. It's not like a bullet and a projector that will fucking shoot perfectly straight, like a real gun. And she fucking points and gets a perfect headshot in the ear or whatever of the skull crawler. When the skull crawler is running, she's on a mountain with a flare gun. That's not a double whammy. That's a triple whammy, folks. I saw that. I'd laugh my ass off. I'm so glad I wrote that down. Perfect headshot. Oh man. Before I talk about the last bit, wrapping up the podcast about the writing, of the film. People had some specific questions here about the film because it's obviously kind of a dinosaur film, and the community wants to know. So Jurassic Dino asks if we got Kong as much as we did Godzilla in 2014. That's a great question, Dino. We get more of Kong, and I heard from people that they said they liked Kong better than Godzilla 2014 because we do get more Kong. I don't think that's an argument I agree with, because just because we see Kong more doesn't make the film better, because the characters and the plot for the most part was weaker. Ryan Tessone, sorry if I mispronounced your name. I'm not good with names at all. I'm actually a face guy. How did your audience respond to the film? Did they seem to enjoy it? What opinions did you hear from them after the movie? That's a great question. They laughed kind of, but there were a lot of jokes in the film that really didn't laugh at. It was almost like a Ghostbusters 2016 type deal where there's a lot of jokes and a lot of the jokes did not hit. But I think when the curtains raised, a lot of people clapped, and I think a lot of people thought the film was okay. Of course, there was a couple fanboys afterwards that thought it was amazing, but I think when you talk to people, they thought it was pretty good. But then once I started talking to them, they're like, "Oh, I can see why you think that." How would you rate the soundtrack? Shell asks. I would say it's probably worse than Godzilla. And he also asks, does the story explain the origins of Kong, like how he got there? No, not really. He kind of was just like there, and his parents were there, and it's kind of like his island from what I get from it. They really didn't explain anything else, which is kind of crazy because there's actually a lot of exposition in that film, including, oh, you can't have Kong. It's like the fucking story we've heard a million times. Kong can't go down because everything, like the Skullcrawlers, will rise up and defeat the natives. So, oh, great question by Lord Nihilus Valamuku. Valamuku? Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, bro. He asked if Sam Jackson, John Goodman croak, or will they be around for another MonsterVerse flick? They really should have been because they're great fucking actors. Unfortunately, they croak. Luckily, it wasn't too early. But John Goodman croaks first. The Skullcrawler kills him. He goes, oh shit. It's like, it's all silent. He took like a photo or something and goes, oh shit. And then the Skullcrawler just all of a sudden out of the blue kills him and eats him. And Sam Jackson, all the way at the end, I think gets killed by a Skullcrawler after he tries to kill Kong. Valu also asks if the Skullcrawler is the big bad or is there a bigger fish? Unfortunately, the Skullcrawler is the big bad. There are no dinosaurs. There is no T-Rex or V-Rex. It just kind of stinks, but the rumors and reports are true. There are no dinosaurs on Kong Skull Island. And is there any other connection with Godzilla apart from the presence of Monarch besides the end credits scene? Pretty much no. So those are all the Twitter questions. This movie is written by 3 normally talented screenwriters, especially Dan Gilroy, who did Nightcrawler. How the fuck did this movie suck? You have 3 good screenwriters here. If you saw this film, which you probably haven't yet, but when you do, please tell me the names of one character. Can you tell me one character name? I can't. They never said their names enough for you to remember. I only knew them from their actors' names. Like, oh, that's Bree. There's Sam Jackson, baby. John C. Reilly, blah, blah, you know. That's not good. It's actually crazy how good Godzilla 2014 was and how bad this is. And actually, when I checked out at that Skullcrawler in the graveyard scene 2/3 of the way through the film, I said to myself, I want to go home and put on Godzilla 2014, actually a decent film. Like, do any of these characters arc in the film? Like, nobody changes. Like, Sam Jackson doesn't go from I hate Kong to, all right, I like Kong. Brie Larson doesn't go from hater to lover or lover to hater. Maybe Tom Hiddleston goes from like a guy who's doesn't care so much to caring, but not really. Nobody really arcs at all in this film. Gonna think about it, I don't think anyone arced in Godzilla 2014 either, but at least I kind of remember their names. Or do I? I don't know. Actually, I don't know if I remember their names, but it's still a better film. So I'm giving Kong Skull Island a 2 out of 10 for now. The toys still look awesome, so I mean, if you guys want to pick them up, I recommend you picking them up. I actually want a Brie Larson figure because you should make one, Leonard. I like Brie Larson. But as much as I love Brie Larson, do I love her character in Skull Island? Or do I even remember her name? Thanks, guys, very much for watching. I guess I forgot to say in the last podcast, leave a comment down below for your question of the day. It's called That's a Great Fucking Question. So leave a comment down below in this comment box of this podcast for the great fucking question of the day. Thanks, guys, very much for watching.
End of line.